Hey, everybody, trying to start the show in the right way. Give me just a second. Try to figure out where to go here and get Nikki's open. Here it is. I'll get it right eventually. I guess I will. Hi, I'm Kim McAllister on the Nikki Maduro Show. Of course, as mentioned on the Mark Thompson Show, Nikki's daughter is in the hospital. She continues to be an inpatient, but she's doing better. And so our thoughts are with Nikki as we carry on the show in her absence. But I'm super excited today. By the way, I want to mention the show is sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz at 888 Tax Deal. Hopefully, Steve will join us in a little while to talk more about what he can offer people. But I'm very excited right now to welcome to the show my friend and former co-worker at, we call it Station X, but I'll call it KGO. This is
Yes.
Brian Copeland. Hi.
This is Malcolm X. Hi, how are you? Happy Martin Luther King Day.
You can tell Nikki's the one that starts the show because I'm trying to click on everything. Like, you're not supposed to see me at the beginning, but whatever. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day to you too. It seems weird to say Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day because what it represents, the struggle in our country, is anything but happy.
That's
You
right.
know?
Well, there was an
Uh,
article that somebody wrote. I want to say it was Cornell West about what he called a santification of Martin Luther King, because during Martin Luther King's time that he was here, there were so many people in this country who were opposed to him and who were antagonistic towards him. Now there are Martin Luther King Day mattress sales, and I am not kidding or exaggerating. Free at last, free at last. Buy one at the regular price. The second one is free at last. I mean, it's like that ridiculous.
yeah.
But we forget what this day is really supposed to be about. And that is about remembering the struggle, and the struggle is still going on.
Well, you bring it in. You kind of brought up the topic, and I wasn't going to talk about this until after you got off the air. But let's go ahead and get to it right now, because one of the stories I was looking at for today is this Martin Luther King Jr. bobblehead, and I put a picture of it. I'll put a picture of it up if I can get it. I don't know if I can. Oh, I didn't save it right. I'm sorry, but it's this Martin Luther King Jr. bobblehead, and it's an audio bobblehead. So you wiggle, 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 and you push on it, and he says, "I have a dream." Do you
Wow.
think are we cheapening Martin Luther King Jr. by doing the mattress day sale thing and doing the bobblehead thing? Is it something maybe we should take more reverently instead of more tongue in cheek?
Well, I will tell you something that's interesting. Is first of all, yes, it is irreverent. It is completely disrespectful, and we lose the meaning of what the day is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
But the King children have been instrumental in this stuff. There was a story about maybe 5 years ago that Dexter King, I believe it was, had gone to Graceland to meet with Priscilla and Lisa Marie Presley to find out how they could market Martin Luther King the way that Priscilla and Lisa Marie marketed Elvis. And he had an idea for a theme park called I Have a Dreamland. Called I Have a Dreamland that would have like a roller coaster called the I've Been to the Mountaintop Ride and all of this kind of stuff.
Oh,
They licensed about 10 years ago. They licensed his likeness to be used for a commercial for Target. They for Target. Or you got a guy who's been assassinated, and you're using him, as a
yeah.
spokesperson for. So it's just. I mean, the family started it. To be quite honest with you, but yeah, it's completely disrespectful. It's completely
I
disrespectful.
read, was it last year I was reading that you're not even supposed to say I have a dream or play any sound of it because it's all copyrighted by the family. They don't want it even used on news broadcasts. You have to have express permission to even roll any footage of it at all. But that's the way I think it should be remembered. His words in from his mouth in their context, words that are still as applicable today as they were when he said them. So if you're, I mean, if you're looking to make money, I guess I understand why the family is wanting to trademark everything and lock it down. But if you're looking to really further his message and what maybe he might want the world to remember, then I don't know if they're doing it right.
Well, I know they're not doing it right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a cash grab is what it is. And these words really should, I mean, while legally, yes, they, his writings and his intellectual property belong to his heirs,
Hmm.
this has such historic and social significance that it should be in the public domain, so that everybody can hear these words, not just people who can afford to broadcast them. And I'll
Hmm.
tell you what, here's how bad it is. Remember the movie Selma that
Yeah.
Oprah produced that was really great about the march from
Yeah.
Selma to Montgomery, which was really a wonder. I mean, a movie that brought me to tears.
Hmm.
It's Edmund Pettus Bridge when the marches were being beaten. When they get to Selma, Martin Luther King gives this speech, and come to find out, it's not a speech that Martin Luther King ever gave. The King heirs would not allow Oprah to use the actual speech, the words from the
Oh.
actual speech he gave, without paying a ton of money, without paying more money than that Oprah could pay,
If
or
anyone
was
could
willing to
afford it,
pay.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, we
So
lose.
what, they had to invent a speech then for the
They
movie,
invented a speech.
which would
They
have been
wrote.
his words in all posterity, living in this, because those are the things that are, people will watch and remember. And so they have
Mhm.
to invent fake words when his real words were so powerful, and really you can't replicate the way he spoke and how he did it.
Well, what they wrote was really well written, and it sounded like him. It's like they wrote it in his voice, so you could see him actually saying the words that he said. And I think that the meaning behind the words that they had him say in the movie was similar to the theme of the speech he actually gave
Sure.
once they got to Montgomery. But and it was powerful. It is a powerful speech, but no, it's not a speech that he gave.
No, what a bummer. Oh. So I think a lot of people, now that we're on the Martin Luther King Jr., we'll talk about that a little bit. And we're talking about, I was actually talking to Spencer Christian earlier about his kind of experiences in the South, uh,
Mhm.
and how there were businesses he couldn't go into in his youth. That was his experience. Your experience has been different in the Bay Area, but you have encountered racism here as well. Do you feel like in 2023 we're in a better place, better
No,
footing than we have been?
no,
No.
no, no. We had made progress. It's two steps forward, one step back. But we have
Hmm.
made progress. But ever since the advent of Trumpism, where it has been made socially acceptable in some areas to be able to say the things out loud, then in the past you wouldn't dare say out loud. People are saying. I mean, I will never forget this. The day after Trump got elected, I was driving into San Francisco to Station X, and I was in I was on the Bay Bridge approach, and I was in my '68 Mustang, and the '68
God, that's a
Mustang.
car. Whew, that's my
You've seen
favorite one of yours.
my '68
Sweet
Mustang
ride.
convertible, and it doesn't have a passenger side mirror. They didn't come with a passenger side side view mirror. And so I changed lanes, single change lanes, and I cut off a car because it was in my blind spot. I didn't see it. So it was my fault. Well, the driver of this car, and it was a Prius, drove up next to me and yelled the N word. And this is the day after Trump got elected. And I hadn't been called the N word. I mean, I've been called, yeah, I grew up, in a mostly white suburb
Yeah.
where, I mean, I grew up with adults driving down the street yelling that word out the window at me. And it had been years since anybody had called me that to my face. And this was the day after the election. I still think it was funny. The guy was driving a Prius, So he's a racist and an environmentalist, both at the same time.
Good for the planet, bad for the people. I don't know.
Yes, I'm all for being green, just not black.
It's interesting that you came on the show on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, because people will think, oh, she invited him on the show because he's black. But actually, I tried to have you on the show Friday. You just were busy.
Yeah, I
And
wasn't
it's
free.
just so happened that you're here today. And I mean, it works out because I think it's, your perspective is different than mine, and I love hearing the stories that you just told. But it makes me sad that you don't think we're in a better space right now. I just wish
Well,
that we
we're
were.
better than when, I guess is the question. I mean, I mean, obviously, it's better in that there are not signs up in the South that say colored anymore.
Yeah.
It is better in that it is not legal to make people of color sit in the back of the bus.
Mhm.
However, housing discrimination still goes on. I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend that that African American realtors have to hide their pictures. They don't put their
Yeah, Mark was
pictures on
talking
their
about that. It's
right
wild
because
because they go to houses
mhm.
and people think that they're the robber or something.
Yeah, yeah, and then you got that other story from about 6 months ago that now is spread. You find out it's nationwide, where you had the couple in Marin
Yeah.
who had remodeled their house and had somebody they were going to refinance it. Had the appraiser come
Mhm.
in, he appraised it really low, so they whitewashed it. Took all of the African art down, any pictures that had their family members in it, and had a white friend come and pretend it was his house. It appraised $400,000 more, and this was
That's
in Marin. And then
$400,000 difference?
$400,000 difference. And so since then, there have been a number of similar stories that have popped up across the country that have exactly the same thing. So that kind of stuff is still going on. You've got voter suppression going on that is obvious, blatant voter suppression. I mean,
Mhm.
and it's amazing how well progressives have done in Georgia, especially since Georgia is one of the worst places for voter suppression. And you can't give somebody water. They closed down half the polling places where African Americans go, and so it means they have to
Outrageous.
stand in line for hours. And if you give somebody a drink of water, you can be I don't know if you can be jailed, but you can certainly be illegally penalized. You can be fined. So
That's the
so
one thing I was just gonna say that's the one thing that the oldest son of Martin Luther King Jr. did say today. He came out and said that the country needs to make voting more accessible for all communities. Martin Luther King the third telling CNN the U.S. is going to get there on voting rights, even if it's not this year. He said it's going to be difficult to get voting legislation passed with the Republican-led House, but that pressure needs to be put on them.
yeah, it does, but it's not going to happen in this Congress. Nothing's going to happen in this Congress. In this Congress, you're going to see a bunch of Benghazi type investigations that are leveled at Joe Biden and Joe Biden's family and members of the Biden administration. 90% of which will not be legitimate. Um, will solely be for the purposes of protecting Trump or lowering the poll numbers of Joe Biden before he runs in 2024. You're going to see infighting. I mean, the funniest thing I saw was during the whole speaker thing. There was a meme going around that I posted on my Facebook saying that the Republicans can't even publicly transfer power to themselves. you know, and so you're going to have the infighting. Nothing is going to happen other than by executive order. Nothing is going to happen in terms of major legislation over the course of the next 2 years. Not going to happen. Not a chance.
Yeah, it's really, really frustrating. Got a lot of people in the chat talking to you. John says we've got a MAGA Congress, Brian. I'd like to think that not all Republicans are the MAGAs,
They're
right? You
not.
saw the 20 holdouts. That doesn't mean they're all reasonable, but it doesn't mean they're all Trumpers, and they're kind of
Well,
backing away from him a little bit.
but here's the problem. You have 127, I think, is the number of Congress people who voted to overturn the 2020 election, and those people are all still in Congress. So those people are all still in Congress. So there is they call them the sedition faction
Yeah.
of the House, and they're still there. And the 20 holdouts were the most extreme. The Matt Gateses and the Lauren Boeberts and all of those, whack jobs were certainly the most extreme. But yeah, there's I would agree with the fact you have a MAGA House. The House is much more extreme than the Senate is.
Yeah.
You have one or two that are carrying Trump's water in the Senate. Lindsey Graham, among them. But I would say the Senate is never extreme either to the left or the right, as extreme as the House is.
So I
Be left
wasn't
or right.
I'm sorry.
No, I
I
was
didn't
gonna
mean to
say, yeah,
interrupt you.
left or right. Yeah, the house is always more extreme.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I tend to think you're right. They're not going to get much done. They could hardly even elect a leader. So I don't know what's going to happen next. We'll keep our eye on it. Uh, one of the things that people are asking a lot of questions, but and I wasn't going to bring this up, but Anonymous is talking about critical race theory. It's something kind of a conversation that carried over from the Mark Thompson show, and we were talking about what critical race theory means. Is it really being taught in classrooms? And Anonymous is asking if it covers every race or just African Americans, natives being having under genocide by Americans, Canadian, and French. I think when I think of critical race theory, I think of it just telling the full truth and the full story, no matter what the race is. What do you think?
Well, I think exactly the same. I think that the phrase critical race theory is just a crock of crap that's being used by the right in order to promote culture wars. Again, because they have no agenda. They have no plan. They have nothing to run on. Nothing. So what they do is they come up with these divisive wedge issues that they create out of thin air. Critical race theory is not something that was being taught in schools. It was something that was, from my understanding, part of certain college curriculums. But what they are, the way that the right is framing it is that critical race theory is any discussion of anything that might make white people feel guilty
Hmm.
or make white people or make white kids feel badly about themselves. So therefore, it is the stifling of the true American history. And it's not just about African Americans. It's about how Columbus had the indigenous people practically enslaved and working in copper mines. And if they didn't bring back what the daily quota of copper was they were supposed to have, they would have their hands chopped off. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we were not taught in school.
Yeah.
The Black Wall Street riot, and where they completely leveled, destroyed
Whole
Black Wall
town.
Street in
Yep.
1921. Most people found out about that watching Watchmen, the Watchmen series on HBO. And I remember the next day, the New York Times had a front page article going, "Well, that thing you saw last night on Watchmen,
That
it
actually
really did
happened.
happen.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
did happen." So
Yeah.
these are the kinds of things that they don't want these things to be taught. They
Can we
don't want
talk
these things to be taught.
can we talk for a little bit about was something you mentioned, which is white people feeling guilty? Because when you do teach these things, which I mean, why wouldn't anybody want to know the truth? I think
Mhm.
there is an element, I would imagine that there's an element if I'm someone of color feeling angry when I hear something horrible has been done to people that look like me just because they look like me. And there is an element of guilt because when white people hear that what their ancestors may have done, it's like, "Oh God, that's awful. How could we have done that? Like, how did," and you do say we, even though it wasn't you. But
Mhm.
is there anything wrong with that anger on one side and guilt on the other? Does it ever come to a place where, yes, we know the truth and we know it happened, and those feelings are actually benefiting us to get where we need to go?
Well, I would say that from personal experience that you're going to have a lot of white people who are going to be outraged and angered when they find out what the true history of America is. And how the true history of America. Let's be honest, what we were taught in school is a lie. We were taught a pack of lies. We were the things in history were cherry picked that made the country uh, gave the country good PR as far as kids were concerned, indoctrinated us into believing George Washington never chopped down that cherry tree. That's a made up story. We the things were cherry picked that were indoctrinated into kids so that we viewed American history in a certain way. Things that made us look bad. I mean, I never
Mhm.
learned about Japanese internment in school. I learned about that years later, years after I was out of school. I learned about Japanese internment.
I was telling
Um,
Spencer earlier, I never learned about Juneteenth until a couple years
I
ago.
was
I
just going
didn't
to say,
even know about it. Yeah.
I didn't know about Juneteenth until
Yeah.
I was 30 years old before I first learned
Yeah.
anything about Juneteenth. So, but it's not just guilt on one side. And I don't know. And here's the thing I don't get too. They say anything might make white kids feel guilty. Why would they feel guilty? They didn't do it. You know
No,
what I'm
because I
saying?
think you look back and you want your ancestors to have been the good guys, right? You want your
Mhm.
people to have been your people to have been to have stood for something, to have been had more character and been better, and then you find out they weren't. And there's it just I don't know. I agree. I agree. You didn't do it, right? Just like
Exactly.
yeah, I
You
don't
didn't do it.
yeah. Didn't do it, but it doesn't make you feel any less worse about what happened.
Well, yeah, that's true. And but as I said, there are a lot of people. The things that you're talking about that you didn't know about are things that outrage you. You're not African American, and things that outrage you.
Yeah.
I mean, when we hear about atrocities, I mean, I'm not Jewish, but when I see and read and hear news quote unquote news stories that come out about the Holocaust, it sickens and outrages me.
Right. Right.
So I guess what it's called is empathy, and that's the thing that has been missing since Donald Trump first came down that escalator. Was
Mhm.
was it was there was a pass given to people to say that we no longer have to have any kind of empathy whatsoever for people who do not look like us. Period.
Yeah.
Which is why you can have Ron DeSantis take busloads of people on Christmas Eve and ship them to Washington D.C., where it's 30 degrees outside, and they have no long pants and they have no coats, and you can dehumanize them and treat them in that way because you have no empathy. And so that's really what it boils down to. And that's what, when they're talking about all this quote anti-woke nonsense, what they're saying is that we should not have empathy for anybody other than people who look like us, because let's face it, we're the real victims here. I mean, that's what
I'm
it
getting
is.
yeah.
That's what the Ron DeSantis are saying. That's what they're saying.
Yeah. You can even look at his whole don't I know it's not technically don't say gay is not in the bill, but if
Right.
you look at that, it's anything other than what we want to promote is not okay.
Well, I mean, you've got Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who how in the hell did she get elected governor? Who one of the first things she does is signs an executive order, if not the first thing, an executive order saying that Latinx will no longer be used in that state
Mm.
on any state documents. You can't use Latinx. So I mean, it's just again, this comes down to a marginalization of people who don't look like us, or who don't behave the same way that we do, and who don't worship the same way that we do. It's okay to marginalize these people and have no empathy for them. The cruelness is the point. That's the thing. The cruelness is the point.
We're getting another question from
Cruelty, I
John,
should say.
who wants to ask you about mental health during the age of COVID. You've been really open talking about mental health. He says many mental health professionals aren't available. There's years waits to see anyone. So I guess the discussion really centering around how COVID affected mental health and the state of our mental health kind of infrastructure that we have right now, where people need help and can't get it.
I think that it was speaking as somebody who suffers from depression, being locked
Mhm.
down for a year was devastating. I mean, it was absolutely devastating. It was my son Casey and I. Thank goodness I wasn't by myself. It was the two of us.
Mhm.
And I wrote a book and I wrote a play. Is what I did during the shutdown time. I was able to occupy myself, but still my
That's
mental
good.
health was not good. And once the shutdown
Mm,
was over, I was agoraphobic. I didn't leave the house for probably 2 months after the
yeah.
shutdown was over, because I would get this feeling in my stomach walking outside the door. So we have a mental health crisis and we have a suicide crisis in this country. My show, the waiting period, which deals with my battles with depression, um, uh, I had been doing as a public service, and doing it for free on a couple of Sundays a month at the Marsh, so that people who were struggling, or people who had family members who were struggling, could come in and see the show. And it's basically a
Mhm.
suicide prevention show. So we're going to bring that back starting in March, and it'll be free to the public a couple of Sundays a month at the Marsh. And so I don't know what the exact dates are yet, but if you go to ryancopeland.com, the dates will eventually be up there.
But do you have another show going on as well?
Matter of fact, I do. I got a show that we opened in October. One of the shows that I wrote during the shutdown.
Mhm.
called Grandma and Me, an ode to single parents. And it opened in October, and critics have been really nice. So we ran through the beginning of December, and then we took a hiatus for the holidays, and it will be back this weekend on
Yeah.
Saturday night at 5 at the Marsh. And in fact, can I give away some tickets? Can I do that?
Yeah. Oh, God, yes. Please give away some
Yeah.
tickets. So it's in
Okay,
the
so
Marsh in San Francisco at the Marsh in San Francisco. So
yeah,
you gotta be able to
Saturday
get to the city, right?
I'd be able to get to the city. It's a 4 block walk from the Mission, what is it, Mission 23rd Street or Mission 24th Street station. It's the 21st in Valencia. And the show's at 5 o'clock. And what we'll do is the first 5 people who send me an email at Copie, COPIE, at briancopeland.com. First 5 people will get a pair of tickets.
Oh,
So
that's so nice.
so don't try to get them unless you're 100% sure you can come, because what happens is that
Yeah.
then you win them, and then there are people who wanted to come who couldn't come, and if you decide not to go, then those people can't come.
Yeah.
So don't try to get them unless you're 100% sure you can go. But that show, what it's about is it's about how my mother died when I was 14, and my grandmother took over 5 of us. We were ranging in
Oh.
age from 1 year old. My youngest sister was 1, and my
Mhm.
oldest was I was the oldest at 14. And it's the first year of how she struggled as a single parent in 1980 to deal with us, and then flash forward to 2001 when I go through a divorce and I become the custodial parent of my 3, who were first grade, fifth grade, and seventh grade. So it's 2 stories that are woven
Mhm.
back and forth between how I dealt with single parenthood and how grandma dealt with single parenthood. And what was really cool, the examiner said that if you are a single parent or you've had a single parent in your life, you must see the show. That's what the examiner said. So,
When
so come
you
on
when you I mean, you've had it both ways, right? So you were a
out.
married parent, and then you were a
Mhm.
single parent.
Yeah.
What's the big I mean, what's obviously, you don't have someone to help you with the day-to-day things, but
Mhm.
what's kind of the most, mentally taxing thing about doing it by yourself?
It is the added worry that you have, because no matter how or why the family is broken, with us, it was because of a death. So we were in a million pieces. And then with my kids, it was because of a divorce. So they were in a million pieces. And
Mhm.
so the hardest part is how you keep them together, and you deal with the acting out, and you deal with the depression that they go through, because all of a sudden, the ground between their feet, has
Mhm.
has shifted. And how you deal with all that, and try to keep them all together in one piece. That's the hardest part, because that's an issue you don't have to deal with if it's an intact family.
We have another John's asking you, got a lot of good questions for you today. He wants to know how Santos got elected. Didn't anybody check his homework and his resume?
You know what? I don't get that at all. I mean, first of all, whoever was in charge of opposition research
Right.
for his opponent's campaign should, not just be fired, but should be flogged. I mean, how do you miss something as simple? Well, I guess there comes a point. I was reading an article. Gosh, I read so much stuff, and I can't remember where everything came from. But an article about con men and about lies. I know what it was. It was an article about there's a docu series on Netflix that I highly recommend on Bertie Madoff.
Mhm.
Okay, on Bertie Madoff, it's four episodes, and it's the whole scam. And what the point of this article was, comparing Madoff to like Santos, is that the bigger the lie is, the easier it is to get people to believe it.
What?
Because with people, yes, because here's the thing: if I say I graduated from Harvard and I worked at Goldman Sachs and I have $5 million and I have a charity that takes care of homeless cats, it's the lie is so big that nobody's going to go. Well, everybody's going to. Well, why would somebody lie about that? If it's a little thing, if you say that I
Yeah.
was in the army and I was in the special forces, but you weren't, but you were in the army, I mean,
Right.
it's something in terms of, say, stolen
Sure.
valor and so forth. But it's not the
Yeah.
same as saying, oh, I graduated first in my class at Harvard. I got a volleyball scholarship. My mom died in 9/11. That was one of his lies. My mom died in
Yeah.
9/11. Then you find out she'd had 3 years. I lost 4 employees in the Pulse nightclub shooting. Those lies are so big that you go, well, why would anybody lie about that? And that's why Madoff was able to get away with what he did for as long as he did it, because the people got their returns at 12% or 15%
Yeah.
quarterly, like clockwork, and they didn't ask any questions. They were getting their money, and so why would he lie about the fact that he's investing and making money? It's too many people involved. It's international. It's you had heads of state, you had royalty who had invested with him. And so the lie is so big that why would anybody not believe it? And that's what it was with Santos. And I think that's probably why they didn't go into his background as deeply as they should have, because the lies were so enormous that it's like, again, why would you lie about that? Because it's too easy to prove you're lying. So let's not even bother looking at it.
There was a time when being a liar, liar, pants on fire would open an ethics investigation and get you kicked out of Congress. And now he's a vote. They need the vote. He'll go along with them. It doesn't seem to matter that he's a liar, liar, pants on fire. What do you think should happen to him versus what do you think will happen to him?
Well, it doesn't. I don't think it's ever got anybody kicked out of Congress. I think what's happened is that the noise from the constituents
have pressure to resign.
Had the pressure to resign, and eventually that's what's going to happen to Santos.
You think he'll feel the pressure because he seems to be fighting it?
He's fighting it, and he'll fight it for as long as he's able to. But once he's indicted, and he's going to be indicted, he donated $700,000 to his own campaign. Yet he disclosed in his previous when he ran in 2020 that he made 50 grand a year, and he refuses to say where the 700 grand came from. That's where they're going to get him. They're going to get him for that. Once he's indicted for that, he's got dozens of expenses that are $199.99, because at $200 you have to report. And there are dozens that are exactly. There was an article, somebody went to a restaurant that he went to in New York all the time. There's several charges of $199.99, and they had dinner there and tried to see if they could make their check come out to exactly $199.99.
That's crazy.
It wasn't doable.
Absolutely wild. A lot of love for you in the chat today. Lori Above the Bar says, we saw the show. It was amazing. You should all go. Yes.
Oh, thank you, Lori. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
The lady Beatrice says, my mom was a single parent, so I get what it's like. I think a lot of people get what it's like, right?
Well, come on out, Beatrice. Come on and see the show.
Yeah, and again, email Brian. You've got 5 pairs of free tickets for you. But even if you don't end up getting the free tickets, if you can get to San Francisco, it's really something worth doing to do that. Marie says, I'm thrilled to hear you, Brian. So another one, Sam Bug, love Brian. Thank you for having him on. Miss you on the air, Brian. A lot of people follow us.
Let me just mention, by the way, that I've got a podcast that we just did our 135th episode of. We started it 2 weeks before the shutdown, and we were doing it at a studio over on Battery Street. Then the shutdown happened, so we started doing it from my house and by remote. And it's called Copeland's Corner. And you can get it at iTunes. You can get it at Spotify. You can go to briancopeland.com, and it updates there. We record every Wednesday. We drop on Thursday. And what it is it's me and a different panel of comedians every week. And for 45 minutes to an hour, we do exactly what you and I are doing. And that is, we talk about what the news of the week is. Sometimes it's really heavy. Sometimes it's funny. We don't come on and do shtick. We just talk. And what comes out, comes out. But the latest episode as Lori Kilmartin, who's hysterical,
she's awesome.
Lori was one of Conan O'Brien's writers for the last 11 years that he had a daily show. And Ron Vai, who was one of Joan Rivers' writers. And we go through Santos and a lot of the things that are going on. So if you miss hearing me on the air, you can catch me every week, Copeland's Corner.
Where do people find it?
Anywhere where you get your podcast. Spotify's got it, iTunes has it, Amazon has it, or if that's too much trouble, just go to briancopeland.com, and there's a link. It automatically uploads when the show drops, and you can listen to it there as well.
That's awesome. So we're in good company. You can get the Mark Thompson show and the Nikki Maduro show also on all the podcast platforms. It's nice to be able to do that because for so long we had, KGO, this giant community conversation to participate in. And when you don't have the ability to talk about things and, communicate with people and share ideas, I think we're in a worse place for it.
Oh, absolutely. That the Station X was the town square.
Hmm.
And now there really is no town square, other than what Nikki's doing and what you're doing and what Mark is doing. There really isn't a town square to discuss these things. And the reason I started the podcast was I would read things in the press and just go out of my mind about stuff like George Santos. And
Sure.
my daughter Carolyn got tired of listening to me bitch. She goes, "Why don't you just start a podcast?" And that's why I started it. And she sends her love, by the way, to you and to Nikki, Carolyn.
Oh, yeah, she's a very good friend of mine. I love your daughter very much, and you are a new grandfather.
Yeah, she had a baby girl 3 months ago. She had a little baby
Yeah.
girl named Nora 3 months ago. So, in fact, when you and I are done, I'm going to go see her. I'm getting
Oh,
ready.
awesome. Yeah, that's so great. Congratulations. This is your first grandchild, right?
First one. Hmm.
How's
First
it
one.
how's it different from being a parent? I mean, you still have that love when you hold that baby in your arms, but I don't know if is it a different feeling?
Yes, because when she's wet, I can give her back. Here's the surreal thing. There's just something surreal, and again, it's all brand new. I mean, there are
Yeah,
things I'm going to learn about the differences and stuff. And
right.
I mean, as soon as I held this little girl when she was 1 day old, I would jump in front of a train or a bullet for her. No, I knew it in
Yeah,
that instant.
yeah,
But there's something surreal about holding your kid's kid. I cannot articulate it. I cannot put it into words. But when you
yeah.
hold your kid's kid, there is just something about that. That's just yeah. I just can't put it into words. It's magical. It's really really magical.
Oh, it's so wonderful, and she's darling too. I was very, very lucky. I wanted to talk to you a bit about this story, which I just kind of discovered right now, uh, earlier. This story about TikTok. Have you been following the whole TikTok being
No,
banned
not at
from?
all. What's going on with that? Because I have
So
not followed that at all.
the thought of is that TikTok is a kind of a way for the Chinese government to eavesdrop on America, that it's not good, especially if you work in government. So now an analysis by CNN says TikTok is at least partially banned from government devices by more than half of the states in America. That some
Wow.
have also taken action against other apps like WeChat and Alipay that have links to China. TikTok has said an agreement with federal officials would be the best way to resolve any security concerns. Now, I remember Trump tried to ban TikTok. Now, all the
Mhm.
states are saying if you work in state government, you can't have TikTok on your device. I'm wondering, do you think we're taking the social media thing too far, or is it something that people need to be concerned about?
If there is definitive proof that TikTok is a means by which the Chinese government or any foreign government is able to easily spy on Americans, then I think they're right to try to ban it. It's a matter of national security. If in fact that can be proven, again, I don't know. I'm not really well versed in this story, but if it is provable that this is what can be done with this app, and this is what is being done with this app, then you have no choice. You've got to put your finger in the dike, so to speak, to keep the flow of information, from
Yeah,
leaking out to our adversaries. So,
yeah,
under those circumstances, now again, is this true or is this hyperbole? Is
yeah,
this just and see, that's the problem. There's so many lies. There are
yeah,
just so many blatant lies about everything. You don't know what you can believe and what you can't.
yeah. I think the question I ask myself is, well, what do we get by not having TikTok? Does that harm us at all? versus the potential of
I
harm,
don't even have a
I'm
TikTok
okay with no
account.
TikTok.
Everybody keeps telling me, your kids and everything, oh, you got to get, I got Instagram, I got Facebook
Yeah.
and everything. And I got Twitter. I'm on Twitter, which I'm thinking about leaving because of the whole Elon Musk thing. I was going to drop out immediately, but I'm kind of biding my time to wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
But, everybody saying, oh, you need a TikTok account. And, I'm thinking about it, but I don't have one. I don't feel
Yeah.
like I'm lesser than because I don't
No.
have one.
And my life is not affected.
Hole in my life.
Yeah.
I have this
Yeah.
hole in my life.
All right, I want to bring in Nikki because she's here, and I know I've kept you too long, and I'm so sorry. But I'll bring in Nikki, and I'll lob this story at both of you.
Yay! I'm so
Because
excited to see Brian's face. I was so hoping you would bring me on. Brian, thank you for coming on. We have to get you back regularly on this show. I just love seeing your face.
Yeah.
Well, your show is terrific, and I'm glad that you guys are doing this. I'm really glad that you're doing it. So, and my best wishes go out to you and your daughter.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's weird to be on this side and not actually doing the show, but Kim, I love you for stepping in. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so here's the story. Today marks the 104th anniversary of Prohibition.
Okay.
The 18th Amendment sought to ban the manufacture, sale, transportation of alcohol in the U.S., of course, eventually overturned in 1933. But just thinking about Prohibition, overturning it, making things legal, makes me think about marijuana and what's going on with the legalization, medical and first, and then now recreational in many states. And I'm wondering, just as you look at it, do you think that has been a good thing? Or do you think it has been more problematic? What are your thoughts on what's happening now? Not necessarily with booze, but with weed.
Brian, you go first.
Want me to go first? Well, actually, I'm going to talk about both because they do, they are analogous what you're talking about. All Prohibition did was make the mob rich. I mean, that's really what Prohibition did, and I'm a real student of that period of time. As a kid, watching reruns of Elliot Ness and the Untouchables going after Al Capone, I was fascinated by that period of time. The 20s and the early 30s before, what was it, the 21st Amendment? 21st Amendment, is that what it was that got rid of the 18th? So what it did was, because of the fact that it was something that was illegal that everyone wanted, they were able to supply it at a profit. And a lot of people got rich and a lot of people got murdered. And that's what it did. And so you want to talk about marijuana, it really was the same deal. When it was illegal, there were a lot of people who got rich dealing it, and there were people who ended up being incarcerated and people who ended up getting killed and everything else because of it. And once you legalize it and you put a tax on it, to a certain extent, you take the criminal element out of it. Here's my problem with it, and I will fess up and tell you, I don't smoke. I smoked for years. I'm a comic. I smoked from 18 to probably 40. I smoked. Probably most days. I would go out and do a show or perform somewhere and then come home and smoke and write jokes, but I never did it in public, and I never did it and drove, and I never did it, when I had to work and all that kind of stuff. But we were not, the fact that it's legal now, and it's legal in California in your own house kind of thing, people don't care about that. And the problem we have is that people are smoking everywhere, and they're being obnoxious about it, and they're doing exactly the thing that the critics of legalization said they were going to do. Is that if you open that door a crack, you're going to see it everywhere. That little park, when I worked at Station X with you guys, I would take part into the Embarcadero, and I don't know, what is that, Washington Square Park that we would go through?
The Hippie Hill one? Oh no! Oh,
you're Civic Center Plaza.
There you go.
Yes. Every day. I mean, literally every day. Once it became legal, like Jesus, in order to walk through that park. I have been on the freeway going 75 miles an hour with my top down on my car, on my convertible, and gotten a whiff of weed. Yeah. And I'm thinking, how the hell am I getting a whiff of weed going 75 miles an hour on the freeway? And it's because the fact that, it's like you're blowing it. You're giving the critics of this exactly what it is that they want. The law is you could smoke it in your own house. Not that you can stand on a street corner anymore. You can stand on a street corner and drink a beer legally.
Right.
You should be driving doing this any more than you can drink a beer while you're driving. So, but I think that the bottom line is that when something is illegal and desired, you increase crime, because the criminal element will find a way to provide it to the people who want it.
Well, and then that was kind of my point about the whole thing. It's really only, and you'll know this if you look at the number of often Black men incarcerated for marijuana offenses. I mean, we're still too slow of getting a lot of these young men, now older men, out of jail. And so we know that, just because something's illegal doesn't mean that the law is applied equally amongst all different groups of people. And so when you have that, on one hand, if we could reverse that, if we could improve that by legalizing marijuana recreationally, so it is not criminalized unjustly on a certain group of people, great. I think Brian has a great point about it. But I remember when it was first legalized medicinally, I went 2K jail for my college internship, and a guy comes up to me and he's smoking a bowl on the street in front of the Caltrain station, and he's like, "It's legal now, And I'm like, and I smoked back then too. And I'm not doing that with you, man. I still think that we should maybe not be in the middle of the street doing that. And I still sort of feel the same way. Although I think the difference between marijuana and alcohol is that when you use marijuana, other people know you're using it. They could smell it. They're impacted by it. Standing outside of a bar, if there's an outdoor patio and seeing people drinking, it's not impacting you in the same way. And so I get Brian's point. I just think that legalization reduces the number of incarcerated people in our overrun jail and prison system. And that's what I want to see more of.
Well, I'll tell you, to piggyback on that, one of the great injustices that we see is, you're right, it is primarily men of color who are in prison for long stretches for dealing marijuana, yet cities that have provided, like I live in San Leandro. San Leandro gave out, I think it was 3 permits. Is either 2 or 3 permits for dispensaries in this city, and you had to actually go before the city council and apply, and it was a vetting process, and they ended up with like 12 people trying to get these 3 licenses to be able to do it. And it's young, white, hip tech guys that are getting it. So let me get this straight: you are able to get rich selling marijuana, whereas somebody who did it 10 years ago is sitting in a jail cell.
Exactly.
There's just something that's wrong. There's something that's just wrong about that. Now, what Oakland did was Oakland set aside a couple of the permits for their dispensaries for people who had gone to jail for marijuana related offenses. So those licenses had to go specifically to somebody who went to jail for selling pot when it was illegal. And that's
that's interesting.
It's a whole way of redressing it, but it's a means of doing it.
And it's a drop in the bucket. We know it, so.
Yeah.
Brian Copeland, tell me about your shows one more time.
Grandma and Me returns to the Marsh in San Francisco. We're just going to do from now to the end of February on Saturdays. It's probably going to run longer, but it's Saturdays at 5. It's an early show. It's over about 7. So it's the Marsh in San Francisco. For tickets, go to themarsh.org, or there's a link at briancopeland.com for anything and everything I'm doing. If you just go to briancopeland.com, there's a link to the podcast. There are shows that are coming up. I've got a lot of new things, some things I can't talk about. One thing I can, people go, what have you been up to? My first play, Not a Genuine Black Man. Rob Reiner and I are working on developing it for television.
So good.
How exciting.
That's what I've been doing for most of the last year. Is I've been writing scripts and sending them to Rob, and then Rob goes over them, rewrites, and sends it back. And it's kind of intimidating, because it's kind of like, well, I want to argue about now when Harry met Sally, then I'll argue with you. When I can make the Princess Bride, then I'll say, you're wrong about this joke. So hopefully we'll see something on Netflix or one of the streaming networks with this sometime next year. hopefully.
Yay! That is
So
so
good.
exciting.
Well, I loved batting stories around with you in the newsroom at Station X, and I've loved it here. And I hope you'll come back on the Nikki Maduro show
You
and kind
better.
of. I love your takes on stuff, so I want you to be back.
Oh,
Me
well,
too.
invite me.
All
You
right.
never invited me before. Invite me, and I'll come.
Done.
Oh, I'll invite you,
Done.
baby.
I had
I
to
love
walk all
arguing
the
with
way
you,
to my
Brian.
I had to walk all the way to my family room in order to do this. I mean,
I
Oh
know.
my goodness. Well, go have fun with your little granddaughter. We love you.
Bye, Brian.
All right.
Bye,
And
buddy.
Carolyn said hi to you too, Nikki, by the way. She said to make sure I said
I
hello.
love her. All right. Bye. Oh,
Bye.
I love them. Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, so see what's going on in your absence here. I'm trying to have some guests, trying to
I love
I'm no
it.
Nikki Maduro, but I'm working
No,
it, girl.
you're awesome. Thank
I
you,
screwed
thank you,
up on
thank you.
Friday. I had I did it on Facebook and not on YouTube because
You know, there's a learning curve. It's okay.
we've divided things up. Like you always start the show because I'm over with Mark, right? And
Mhm.
then I come in and I'll click on the chats and have them be up on the. We have the work divided, and then
Yes.
when something goes wrong, what the hell am I gonna do anyway? So
It's
how's it
okay.
going
You're
in the
fine.
hospital? Everybody's sending you such good
Oh
wishes
yeah.
and luck and thoughts and everything. So what are you guys up to over there?
It's another day of just adjusting to everything. I do appreciate all of the kind words. Unfortunately, our date of getting out of here has been pushed back again.
Hmm.
And so we're just taking it day by day. And I think the good part and the frustrating part is she feels okay, but it's not matching up with what's on the inside. And so we're just
Hmm.
trying to come to terms with that. But she's a tough kid. I will tell you this. She has a voice and she's my daughter and she's sitting here listening to me on the other side, but she doesn't want to be on camera. But to watch her, advocate for herself and kind of step away and it's very important for her to do that because she's going to be doing this for the rest of her life. But also, we're in the pediatric wing and um, you really, although I hate being here and she hates being here, you walk around and you see other people and you are grateful because, you know, that other people are going through something either just as tough or tougher. And so it is tough. It's tough sleeping here every night, being away from everybody in the show, but I
Hmm.
appreciate you guys all understanding and yeah, it is what it is as my family always says. It sucks and we're just hoping we're ever so closer to the other side of the whole thing.
Anonymous is asking, how's the cafeteria food?
Okay, so that's so funny that you're asking. I think I'm gonna start making videos of how it tastes in my reviews. Actually, not bad. I think my biggest problem with the cafeteria is the times that they're open and
Right.
the fact that I have to go down quickly. My daughter's 13. This is her first time spending the night in the hospital. She doesn't want me to leave at all.
Hmm.
So, I gotta go down there. But let's see. I've had oatmeal out of a container. I had a grilled cheese sandwich that was actually pretty good.
Right on.
And then I've learned, I could DoorDash to the emergency room. So we're doing a mixture of all three, just because I'm like, sometimes I don't want to eat it, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and then not come down again. So I've been learning the ways, and the nurses here are amazing. And, I want to
Yeah.
definitely get with our segment, Why Do You Do It? I'm a daughter of a nurse, but I want to talk to these nurses and these doctors because they're absolutely amazing, how they've been treating us and my daughter and
Here's
everybody.
a
So,
here's a trick to the cafeteria. The
okay.
salad bar is always safe.
There's no salad bar. There's
What?
fruit. There's
Oh,
fruit.
usually hospitals
Um,
have a salad bar that's pretty good. Oh, I'm
I don't know if maybe with
surprised.
COVID they got rid of that whole buffet style stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's like definitely bananas and fruits and breakfast bars and things
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, and unfortunately my daughter can't eat anything. So,
Yeah.
that's another hard thing,
So
so
no food at all, just IV nutrition?
yeah, at least for the foreseeable future. So,
What's
but
the
we're
thought
hoping.
there that's trying to make sure there's no blockage or something?
Yeah, and just kind of giving her gut a break, and just
Okay.
letting everything calm down. She could
Okay.
drink boosts once a day, so she had one yesterday, and she hopes to get another one today. But yeah, and then doing that at home. So I got to get training for that over the next several days, and being able to do that. But we just want to get her back to school.
Yeah.
Kids always, I don't want to go to school until you can't go to school, and then that's the only thing you want to do.
Sure, we saw
So
that during COVID, right?
exactly. So we're trying really, really hard to get her there and just get home. We just want to go home. So
Yeah, Vilma saying, "I hope you get a chance to rest and take a little time for yourself," because I know you have been there and haven't left the hospital since what, Thursday of last week?
We got here Wednesday.
Okay,
My husband's been working since obviously not working.
right.
And I'm so glad that I could actually chime in on the show today. I'm hoping I'm not stalling. My Wi-Fi is kind of
No, no,
crappy.
you sound perfect and good.
Okay,
All is
good.
well.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, good, good. So I've been able to go home twice to take a shower and see my son, who again has not been able to see his daughter.
Yeah.
Just real quick to kind of,
Sister.
because
Yeah.
sister, sorry,
Mhm.
we haven't been able to. We did not pack to stay as long as we have, so I had to go home and get a whole nother round of clothes and everything like that. I'm just gonna do another free advertising for the Pillow Cube, which is literally the only thing that is saving my butt. I'm telling you. I'm sleeping. Hold on, I can show you. Can I flip my screen? I don't know if I could. I don't think I can flip my screen. Well, there it is. There's the bed chair that I'm sitting in. Can you guys see that?
Oh, yeah.
The pillow
Us.
cube is the
Yeah.
only thing that is helping me sleep at night. The only thing. So just get a good pillow. It doesn't have to be the pillow cube, but if you ever have to do something like this, bring a good pillow because it's the only thing that's gonna save you. And being
Um,
short.
I used something that you told me, not against my children, but as an
Mm,
example to my children who were fighting. I have
mm,
a son and a daughter. You have a son and a daughter, and you told me
yes.
that something so sweet that your son wanted to, because you're the only one allowed into the room,
Mm,
wanted to roll up outside and be able to wave at
yes,
his
he did.
sister from
He
outside the
did. Yeah.
hospital. So I said, "Listen, you got Nikki's kids who are loving each other through a window, and you two are right next to each other, and you can't stop bickering."
I
I don't know
know,
how
but
that went
separate.
over, but that's
Yeah,
really
but
sweet.
if you separate them, I'm sure they'd be the exact same way. But yeah, my son is he just is all heart, that kid. And so yeah, there's like a creek in a parking lot, and so my husband drove over there, and we were able to peek out the window and make like heart hands and stuff like that. So it
So
was sweet,
sweet.
but he really misses her. So yeah.
I want to do this while you're on the air with
Okay.
us because I think this is definitely for you, and because Andreas is thinking about you. So
Oh.
I'm going to show you that Andreas says, "Let's start, Nikki, with some
Oh,
Monday
thank
love."
you.
And he's kicked in $20.
Oh,
And then
thank
he's
you.
done it again with a $50 donation.
Oh, I
So
love you
nice.
so
And then
much.
another 50 saying, "Nikki, you are a great guest host."
I try
And
my
then
best.
another $50
Oh
to
my
your daughter.
God.
May she get well soon. So you can always
Andreas,
click on
thank you.
the, what is it, the heart with the dollar sign, and throw a super
Yeah,
sticker
something
or a
like
super
that.
chat at us. Thank you to Andreas for the financial
Oh,
support. We really appreciate it so
thank
much.
you.
Um, and our thanks to our founding sponsor, Steve Moskowitz, for
Yes.
supporting the show as well. You can also donate at thenikkimadoroshow.com. This is something I have been remiss in saying, through Patreon and PayPal, and we always really appreciate the help on
Absolutely.
that. So while I have you, are you able to
Yeah,
talk to me for a little bit?
let's go.
Can I
Yeah,
can I
absolutely.
throw
Not
throw a
doing
few
anything.
stories at you?
Please
I was
do.
talking to Brian Copeland earlier, and Spencer
Mhm.
Christian before that, but especially Brian, about the kind of the commercialization of
Oh
Martin
yeah.
Luther King Jr. Day. And they have a bobblehead, they have mattress sales. And we were talking about how it kind of cheapens what the message originally was. What are your thoughts about all that?
I mean, you're right. It is a quick way to make a buck over something. And is it really, do any of these sales or kind of, the monetization of his legacy, does that
Yeah.
help his legacy or hurt his legacy? And it's a tough thing to say because who benefits? Are we benefiting as a society? Are we learning more about Martin Luther King Jr. because of these sales or whatever? No, I don't think so.
No.
I think movies, historians, I know you can't really do the speech, right? You can't play any part of the speech.
No, not at all.
Um, so it's up
It's on
to,
lockdown.
yeah, it's up to us, it's up to teachers, it's up to schools, and then of course, there's the whole conflict of teaching possibly in some states in this country about people like Martin Luther King Jr. and what he was saying about people in that time, because all of a sudden you're going to make little white kids feel bad about being white or some crap like that.
Right.
You can't lose the lesson of Martin Luther King Jr., but you also can't lose the fact of what society was like when he was actually alive. And I don't know how we continue to teach his legacy. I don't think that sales and discount mattresses is a way of doing it. I don't think bobbleheads are a way of doing it. I
Yeah.
think it's a really cheap, knee-jerk reaction, 2023 kind of BS. I wish we could play the speech, in all honesty. I wish we could do something that was more directly at him. Did you see the statue that they unveiled?
Yes, I
It was
did see
getting
the
a bit of
statue.
reaction online.
I think I actually have a picture of it. Let me, while you talk about it, I'll throw you
Well,
that. It's called The Embrace, right?
yeah, it didn't look like the embrace. To me, it looks like two legs with hands on the knees. That's what it looks like to me, from a certain angle. They need to show. I saw one guy that was doing an analysis. I don't. It looks like hands on crossed legs. Like that's what it looks like to me, and it doesn't make sense to me. But then when I see the picture and it's him and his daughter hugging,
Yeah.
right, right, it's him and his daughter. Is it him and his daughter?
I think it's
so.
he and his
Or
wife.
His wife.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's him and his wife.
Which, by the
hugging.
way, it's in Boston. It's in
Yeah, it's
Boston,
Coretta Scott King.
in
Yeah.
Freedom Plaza, and it's where not in Freedom Plaza, but in Boston is where he met his wife, Coretta Scott King. And so this is
I don't think
supposed to be kind of a symbol of their love, their
No.
embrace. And by the way, this cost $10 million.
I
Yeah.
didn't know the price tag on it. Look, they should have they should have just done the whole entire picture, in my opinion. They should have had Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King Jr. in the embrace. I
don't know,
see it.
when I look at it though, the more I look at it, you can see like the bicep down below and the hand, her hand coming up. The more I look at it, the more
Would have known what it
interesting it
was.
is. Say again, Nikki?
I'm not trying to knock it. I don't see it. I mean, I now when I look at the picture that it's based off of, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. If I did not see the picture, I would not know what it was. That's just the truth. I would not know
Yeah.
what that was. And I just think that that's a failure. Is this teaching me anything? And I'm not trying to knock it. It's an artist's rendition of part of
Yeah.
a picture. I just don't think it's reaching the goal of educating people about something. So I don't think it's a good statue. That's just my opinion. I just don't think that it's a very good statue. I like the effort and the meaning behind it. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was done. I have to go though.
Oh, you have to
We have
go.
a
I was going to
doctor
ask you
coming in
about the
right now.
49ers, but okay. Thank you for being here. I'm
All
glad
right.
things are going well. We love and miss you so much.
We haven't met.
Bye guys. Bye.
Okay, bye. Yeah, something going on in the hospital room there. And so Nikki a little bit busy. I understand that. We hope that her daughter gets better and that she's out of the hospital, although it's looking like they're not going to leave until Wednesday or Thursday. So we have at least 2 more days of Nikki checking in from the hospital, but I'm so glad she had the time to be able to do that today. I'm very grateful for it. Speaking of the 49ers, and I know Mark mentioned this too, but there's one final ticket to the divisional round of the NFL playoffs to be punched tonight. The Dallas Cowboys are in Tampa to play the Buccaneers, the winner traveling to the Bay Area next Sunday for the San Francisco 49ers game. So we'll see how it goes tonight. And, I don't want to say all eyes are on that game tonight, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see who the 49ers will be taking on next. Do want to take a little bit of time to look at some of the comments that you guys have lovingly taken your time to make today. So here's some of what you have to say. Let's see if I can get to it. A lot of people loving having Brian Copeland on the show, so we appreciate that. Talking about Martin Luther King Jr., Nip One Pearl One says, reality is reality. Just teach what happened. History teaching needs to change. I resent the mission stuff that we learned in 4th grade. Yeah, you know what is interesting? When my daughter was in 4th grade, I fully expected every year in 4th grade, kids have to make a mission. When you pick a mission, every kid gets assigned a mission, and then you have to create the mission. And I have friends whose children have done, the mission project, and it's now up as artwork in their home. Well, for the very first year, they scrap the mission project. My child did not make a mission. Instead, she had to make a Native American Indian village as realistic as possible. So we went on a nature walk and collected moss and acorns and sticks, and then we created it out of that. So things are changing, Knit One Pearl One. I hear what you have to say about that. Uh, but I think that the way they're teaching what happened with the missions and what that meant is a little bit different. Something else I wanted to mention, just speaking of how religion was shoved down people's throats in the most violent of fashions, was that I was watching the precursors to Yosemite. I think it's 1926. There's 1883 and 1926, but 1926 kind of gets into Native American girls who were forced to go to these Catholic schools where basically they beat the language out of them, force them to learn Christian values and ethics, and kind of strip their culture away. If you, it's kind of violent, but if you like Yosemite, and if you're interested, it's a really good show, and it kind of is an eye opener about what they have to go through. Vilma saying, yeah, hope you get to rest and take care of yourself. I hope so too. She's been sleeping on that bed, Vilma, that little, those uncomfortable kind of cushions, but she's not leaving. That is a testament to moms, right? John writes, it's all about votes, this new racism, because they think it worked in Virginia race, handed Youngkin a victory, talking about politics. I'm sorry, I missed part of the conversation there. 1923, Laura, yeah, I'm liking it. I also liked 1883. It was, again, violent. The woman who plays the daughter in that show is amazing. But it's really good. It kind of shows you how that family, why they're so brutal in Yosemite, because they have to have this grit and this determination and this survival instinct to get where they actually ended up. Really interesting. 1923. Did I say 1926? I'm sorry, 1923. Yes. Let's go on to Flo. Whether one calls it being woke or otherwise, it's really about being aware and knowledgeable about the past for a better present and perspective for each generation to come. I agree with that, Flo, although I will say that there are people who want to be aware, who want to know the truth, and weren't taught the truth. And so it's hard to know that you're not aware or woke if you don't have the information you need. And sometimes people don't even realize that they need to seek out different information than they were taught at school. You think you know how it all went down. And it's a surprise to learn about Juneteenth. At least it was for me. It's a surprise to learn about, as Brian was saying, Black Wall Street. These things are nothing I would ever know to even look up. And so until it hits you in the face, until you kind of get it. And I don't want people to have to, you know, go through school being taught the wrong thing and then have to seek these things out when they're adults. I would like that us just to be able to teach the truth and not have to go back and deal with all of this. The Lady Beatrice says, my white guilt has never been so strong. She says, we need awareness and we need to stop tying kids lying to kids in school. Yeah, I agree with you. Need to stop lying to kids in school. And I think you can present it in a way that is, when you're talking to little kids you're talking about atrocities, it can be hard. But I think you start in lower grades, presenting the truth, but building up to what it actually looked like in the end. I think there's a way to do it. I think teachers are amazing and they can figure it out. But I don't agree with the way that people are forced to use certain history books that lie, that don't tell the whole story. As a matter of fact, it's one of the reasons that I used to love the segment on Pat Thurston's show with I forget his name. But it was a book about what about history, or I forget the name of it. I'm so sorry. You guys probably know in the chat. But it's a great book that kind of tells you all the things that you might have missed or that weren't taught the way they were supposed to be. Don't know much about history is what it's called. And it's something that I really did enjoy. So let's do a little bit of news, because I didn't want to leave you without doing that. Here's a story out of New York. All youth sports coaches in New York may soon be required to complete CPR training. Thank goodness. Shouldn't they know that? I think they should know that. A bill proposed by Assemblyman Angelo Barbera would require everyone who coaches children to know this life-saving technique. This comes after a Buffalo Bills player, Damar Hamlin, collapsed during a game and needed to be resuscitated by CPR. Yeah, because in youth sports, maybe you have, someone who happens to be have a medical background in the stands, but you don't have professionals on the sidelines just waiting like that. So I think that's a really good skill. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer pledging to confirm a new FAA administrator. Schumer wants Phil Washington to take on the position after recent airline troubles and technology problems caused headaches for travelers. Washington currently works as Denver International Airport's chief executive. Somebody needs to do something because, every so often the curtain is pulled back and inadequacies are uncovered. And I think, especially this last time, we know that something needs to be done. Airlines need to be held to standards. So you can't just have an old, antiquated system and still be selling tickets and still be doing business. You have to be, I think you should have to be everyone should have to be on the same page with all of that. Of course, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, as we've been discussing, and President Biden reflecting on that in a speech later today. He will be he was rather at the National Action Network MLK Day breakfast in Washington, D.C. And then, of course, yesterday, and I thought this was a pretty big deal, he was at the Atlanta church that Dr. King once led and urged Americans to follow in his footsteps. Of course, the Ebenezer Baptist Church. This elementary school in Virginia is still closed after a teacher was allegedly shot by a 6-year-old student. Rich Neck Elementary in Newport News staying closed for another week following what happened January 6th. Many security changes on the way, including the installation of metal detectors. So now all these kids going to school are going to have to walk through metal detectors. There's new footage showing the largest gathering of turtles on record. Wildlife Conservation Society cameras recently captured hundreds of thousands of baby giant South American river turtles hatching on the beaches near the border of Brazil and Bolivia. Before that, about 80,000 adult female turtles were seen laying their eggs. It's nice to see things maybe getting better in some areas. I always appreciate knowing that. There was a story that I talked about on Facebook the other day, and that I didn't get a chance to talk about here on YouTube with everyone listening. But it's a story about being homeless in the rain. You saw maybe the video of the homeless woman being squirted down in San Francisco by a gallery owner who was rightfully upset that she was there, kind of not allowing people into the business in a calm manner, having a mental illness issue, was yelling at people and creating a ruckus outside. Apparently, he had called for help before and then finally just turned the hose on her to try to get her to leave. There was an issue with him, not being sorry for it or regretful for it. The nonchalant way in which he just hosed her down, and not very human like, you could say. So now he's apologizing. But speaking of homeless people, and things we provide them and help we try to provide them, I was looking at a story in Petaluma about these 25 tiny homes behind a center called the Mary Isaac Center in Petaluma. And in the parking lot, they built these 25 tiny homes, and they're for people that are homeless to live in for as long as 6 months while they get themselves together and figured out, get maybe a job or somewhere else to be. Well, these tiny homes that were just built are now leaking. And so the stuff inside is getting soggy. There's some puddling on the floors. Now the company is being called in to try to fix it. And I was saying the other day that I feel like it's still better. And I know people should have habitable places to live and that we want to do the best by people that we can. But I was also looking at people living in a parking garage in Petaluma, setting up their tents or sleeping bags in a spot, taking one parking spot and letting that kind of be their home during all of these storms. And I was thinking how I would rather be in a tiny home that had some leaks than in the middle of a parking garage with cars driving by and fumes, and it's just so unsafe. And I love that the city is trying to help people with these tiny homes. I feel like I would still rather be in my own space, even if it's a little bit leaky. They're trying to fix all that as we have more storms on the way. We're going to get a break in the rain, but that's happening. Vilma saying tiny homes would be a lot better than tents. I agree. Or a sleeping bag in a parking spot. Every time I drive by that, I think we have to do better. We really have to do better. Uh, Eric is writing about, I think this is about the Virginia shooting. The gun was legally bought by his mother, so the 6-year-old got it from home. Criminal charges for the parent should be considered. I think they are, at least negligence, because how does a 6-year-old get a hold of a gun like that? Eric, I completely agree. And Karen writes regarding the homeless, they should open up the schools for people to go to. But the schools are still, maybe are you talking about the gym? I don't know, because then what happens is, Karen, you have kids that are at school and they can't go outside at recess and play. So they're using the gym for recess and for lunch. And so I don't think you can have the schools open to homeless people while schools are in session. Maybe during winter break would have been okay, but I don't necessarily know that it's horrible the way I was going to say that. I was going to say this, and I realize how insensitive it sounds. I was going to say, I don't want the homeless people at the school while my child is there. It sounds horrible and insensitive, but when you have people that are homeless that are on the street, in some cases, not all, that can bring crime. In some cases, not all, that can bring mental illness. In some cases, not all, that can bring an unsafe environment, not where I want my kids to be. I wouldn't want them roaming around a homeless encampment, and I wouldn't want the homeless roaming around the school either. And it sounds really bad because at the same time, I don't want people out in the rain. I want them to have shelter. Maybe a community center would be a better choice. I'm sorry if that's how it sounds, but I can't help feeling that way. The schools are closed because of the flooding. Not all of the schools, and in Petaluma they're not, but maybe in other communities it's possible. So I don't know. Karen writes, we pay enough in taxes, you would think we would have something to show for it. Yeah, you would think. You would think when they build tiny homes, which don't seem to be that complicated, that they could put it together in a way that it doesn't leak. Unless you thought it was for somebody who didn't matter, so you didn't care as much to build it right. I'm not saying that's the case, but that's kind of how maybe I would view it if I was homeless. Yeah. So thank you for those comments. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you being here for the show. Thank you to everyone who has donated. Nikki's still again in the hospital for a couple more days. We'll try to check in with her tomorrow and get some more guests on the show as we keep things rolling. I'll end it a little bit early, but I thank you for being here. And again, you can donate at the website, thenikkimadoroshow.com. There's a Patreon link on there. There's also, I think there might be a PayPal link as well, but for sure a Patreon link. And as always, even if you're watching this in the recorded version, you can always donate here on YouTube as well. And even if you can't support us financially, we always appreciate a like. Just a little clicky on the like button goes a long way. Really appreciate your help on that. Once again, our thanks to our founding sponsor, Steve Moskowitz, who is at 888 Tax Deal. He's also at moskowitzllp.com, and I am so grateful. If you have any pictures that you want to share with me, you can always email me at kimmcallister@gmail.com. 2 M's, 2 C's, and 2 L's. And I always appreciate and enjoy hearing from you guys. So thank you very, very much for being here. And I will see you tomorrow. Let's end it with, how about a little bit of Jacob singing? Because that's how Nikki ends it. That's how I'll do it too. Here's my boy.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You're proud, like a beautiful blossom. You're also the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow. Okay.